Greetings to all Ghanaians. Greetings to all Tanzanians. Greetings to all Zambians and greetings to all Africans. I am King Eju, the radical Pan-African activist from Ambazonia, aka Ambasby, the 56th nation of the African Union. I don't care what the African Union thinks about what is going on inside Ambazonia between La Republic of Cameroon and Ambazonia. But the fact is this: Southern Cameroon, Ambazonia, will have her independence, her sovereignty, will become a nation, whether the African Union likes it or not, whether West African community likes it or not, whether all five regions of Africa likes it or not. The fact is this: Ambazonia must be recognized as an independent nation. And there's nothing like Republic of Cameroon and the people of La Republic of Cameroon will do to stop that. That being said, my discussion today has to do with, the visit that is going on, or that has happened in Ghana, and that is happening in Zambia, and it's going to happen in Tanzania. These three nations that Kamala Harris is visiting, is visiting, have passed laws against anti-LGBT law. And that should be the case because this is the continent of Africa. The entire Africa countries, the entire African continent must be anti-LGBT. Anti-LGBT laws must be passed all over African countries. The only exception we have is South Africa because, white South Africans control South Africa. They control the laws, they control the economy, they control what happens, and they have been backed up by Western nations. But the fact is, the fight against legalization of LGBT in the continent of Africa continues and will not stop so long as there's a breeding African in the continent of Africa. We Africans are anti-LGBTQ. We Africans will not accept LGBTQ because that is colonization. Western powers, Western nations brought the Bible in the continent of Africa and took the land and colonized us. Now they're doing the same thing through LGBTQ. They're using LGBTQ agenda to colonize, to recolonize the people of Africa. We've went through colonization. Some Africans went through slavery. They were taken out from Africa and brought to other nations because of white people, because of white nation, because of white superiority, because white people think they are superior to African people, to black people globally. And so they continue with their agenda to push for LGBTQ, not respecting the humanity of African people. Africans have not pushed for other agendas in Western powers. They haven't pushed for polygamy in the United States or in Western nations. We don't do that. We just do our own thing. But for some reason, white nation, Western nation, use some black people to push their agenda in the continent of Africa. That is unacceptable. And we will not stop fighting this agenda because it's anti-African, because it goes against our humanity as a people, goes against everything we stand as a people. A child comes from both parents. Children come from both parents and continues. That's how our fathers came, that's how our great fathers came, great. It's a continuous. And when you are trying to change a whole system where you want a man and a man to be involved in sexual relationship, or a woman and a woman to be involved in sexual relationship, you are changing the complete dynamic of the human nature in Africa, and Africans will not accept it. But the fact is simple: Western nations do not respect the humanity of African people. Kamala Harris is going into African nation, went to Ghana, is in Zambia, and will be going to Tanzania. These three nations have anti-LGBT laws where LGBTQ is not has no space in those countries and should not have any space in the entire continent of Africa. But the fact is, white people and Western nations believe that they are our gods and they can tell us what we have to do and we have no say in it. But that's not true. We are our own masters. We are in control of our own fate. And they have to respect that, whether they like it or not. We're not saying that LGBTQs cannot be practiced in Western nations. They can do that. But they just can't do that in African nations. They can't do that in Ghana. They can't do that in Tanzania. They can't do that in Zambia. And they cannot do that in many African nations because that's against our self-survival as a people. It's as simple as that. We will not accept it. We fought colonialism. We never accepted colonialism. We fought against it. Many of our people died for it. We fought slavery. Many of our people died for it. We never accepted it. And we're not going to accept LGBTQ just because it's being brought by Western powers. No, we're not. So let me ask a question to the VP of the United States, Kamala Harris. You said you are going to stand on the LGBTQ. That's your stand. That's the United States stance. And that's what you're going to push in the continent of Africa. And for some reason, you think African nations have to change their views and change their laws to suit LGBTQ because it's human rights. But let me ask you something. You are half black and half Indian. But you see yourself as an Indian, not as a black American. You see yourself as an Indian. What have you done for black Americans when it comes to um, the ongoing police terrorism? Nothing. The ongoing killing of black people by police. What have you done? Isn't that human rights for black people in America? Why are you not speaking up or fighting against police terrorism? Black Americans have gone through chattel slavery, Jim Crow law, white domestic terrorism, racial massacres. What have you done for the black American uh, human rights when it comes to them being persecuted by police, by white Americans who decide to kill black people? What has the government of Biden done for that? They did something for the Asian community. How come you're not doing anything for the Black American community? And if you can't do nothing for the Black American community, how can you do something for the African nations? You can't. You're just there to sell your own bullshit and get your way. You have what you call the AFRICOM in many other African countries, where you have American military bases in the continent of Africa. Do African nations have military bases in the United States? Do African countries have military bases in Europe? Why is that it's okay for Western powers to have military bases in other continents, but it's not okay for that to be in their own continent? Why? For some reason, Western powers takes Africans as fools. They take the government of Africans is full because the government of Africans do not want to act independently. They're always taking money from United States, from European countries, from other nations, instead of creating independent government in the countries of Africa that can speak and act for the interests of Africa. The reason Kamala Harris is there is to give some money, push agendas that has the interest of the United States and doesn't have the interest of Africa. Many shit is gonna happen. Many shit is gonna happen. But we need to watch what is happening so that we can have some leverage in controlling what happens, because the push for LGBTQ in Africa will not stop. It will continue. How will Africans fight back against the rise of LGBTQ in the continent of Africa? Are leaders ready to implement themselves, to be part of the multipolar world where they will have a voice in the multipolar world? Or are they going to support Western nations who only care about unipolar world, where they control, where they dominate, where they have all the power and all the wealth, and how to distribute the wealth in the world? Or will African leaders be bold enough to think and act for the interests of the continent of Africa? This is a question that goes to all Africans on the continent and across the world, because we are a global people and we should have the interests of African people, and we should speak and act for the interests of African people. This is King H, the radical Pan-Africanist. If you like what I say, like and share. Till next time.